Hello and welcome to DIY Indie Musicians Talking Music. Tonight's guest, Mr. OrangeG. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Martin?
I am doing just fine, thank you. So let's start with your name, OrangeG. Is it like a play on OG, or are you claiming big things, or?
No, not at all. I mean, I guess that's part of it, but orange G is actually a dye we use in molecular biology.
Oh, okay.
So the other side of my life, my professional life, is I'm a scientist. I'm a biologist, and so orange G, it's kind of an obscure dye. Not many people use it or know about it, but I always thought it was like a cool name. I was like, uh, I always thought, oh, if I was a rock star, that would be kind of a cool name for a band. Uh,
Yeah, no, it does have it has a certain flair to it, as it were. One thing I noticed when I was sort of listening through your back catalog is you're a bit of a multi instrumentalist. What all do you play?
yeah, I play. I've played guitar since I was in fourth grade, um, and I've played harmonica since high school.
Yep.
Uh, and I play bass, of course. Like I kind of picked up the bass self-taught, and a few years ago I got a banjo, so I do banjo and ukulele. That was like maybe 10 years ago. I picked up the ukulele, and just this last year I picked up the lap steel as well. So
Wow.
um, yeah,
And
so
and and has the lap steel made it onto many recordings?
so my album is basically done, and
Okay.
3 songs are going to have lap steel on it.
And how did you find it was a difficult transition? Because I've heard it's a little bit different than a lot of other stringed instruments.
It's not that bad. The open strings do make a chord,
Hmm.
and it's relatively intuitive. Especially for noodling. If you wanted to add just like a little kind of a little you know melodic emotional element to a song. It's a very expressive instrument, and so you don't need to like play like complex chordings or positionings to really kind of get something out of a lap steel. It was funny watching that Beatles documentary that came out around Christmas. They were playing around with the lap steel. It was um, what
Yeah,
was the
I
song that was on there?
Yeah, I thought that was an incredible documentary, actually.
Oh, it was so good, and they were all just playing with the lap steel. They all like kind of took to it. Like I don't think any of them had been trained in it, but because you're sweet and lovely, girl, I love you. Wasn't that the song that they played?
I can't remember.
Yeah,
Yeah, but they were. I don't know if it was just the sort of theory of the 10,000 hours, which they definitely put in, or they were just naturally talented. Like an athlete who just can pick up any game. I mean, my stepfather was like that. He could, you know what I mean. He could
yeah.
up golf in his 30s and be a scratch player type stuff. It's just athletes, and I think with musicians, some players are the same way.
The 10,000 hours. That's really about performance, isn't it? At least that's the way I've heard that story.
Well, from what I can understand, it's also the question of trying to explain to a certain extent, not so much genius, but really someone who is beyond just competent on something.
Right.
uh, you know, and I think it sort of fits because obviously when you've done that much playing, it becomes more muscle memory, which allows you to open up a lot more than when you're worrying about making a mistake.
I
Uh,
could definitely see that. I mean, I
yeah,
think about that 10,000 hours story. That kind of like you have to put in 10,000 hours of public performance to like be able to like just come up and do your show and be done. I think about that a lot because I've gotten a lot more comfortable over the years playing in front of people, and I certainly haven't put in 10,000 hours of performing yet. So I still feel like I'm on the beginning portion of that curve.
Yeah, well, but it's listen, it's not everyone that had the misfortune and fortune of some of the musicians who started playing really young and then went on the road. It's like someone like Jimi Hendrix. I mean, before Jimi Hendrix became Jimi Hendrix, he was in a lot of bands.
That's true. Yeah.
And he played a lot, and he was playing live, and they were out on the tours, and he was backing up all kinds of famous. It was mostly R&B and Motown players, right? And then finally landed in London, and everything fell in place. But he probably had played the 10,000 hours,
Right. Right.
which was why he was so exceptional on the guitar, right? It wasn't even just practice. He was, he'd been and seen everything, and also backed up just so many great performers that obviously was a thing that really helped in terms of his performance as well.
Yeah. He also was left-handed, right? So
Yeah,
saw the world through a different lens than I think the world was that was shaped for him.
yeah. Well, and that gets into the whole left brain, right brain thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe that explains a lot on why he was just so exceptional, exceptionally different.
Yeah.
And why so many guitarists absolutely went crazy over him. When you especially talking again about the Beatles period, that whole sort of generation of musicians in London, they just lost their mind over him before he became famous, right? So, new album coming out. How many people? I know that you are a musician who loves to collaborate.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, why don't we talk about some of the collaborations on your record that's going to be coming out?
There actually aren't that many collabs on the record. Part of it has been just like the journey to like learn all the like all the sound engineering stuff on my own, and kind of I've learned a ton from my friends who I have collaborated with on other projects.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are very few collaborations on the album. I got a singer on one of my songs, Annie Oaksong is her name.
Right.
And I got a friend of mine to play trombone on one of my tracks, and I'm negotiating with a friend of mine to maybe get some alto sax on that track as well. So
very nice. Now, is that the first time that you've had any horns?
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
I had some MIDI horns in one of my songs, but yeah.
Yeah, they don't really count though.
Well, I think they sound pretty good these days. Those MIDI horns, they can really put out quite a bit.
Well, not only the horns. I find that like some of the plugins that you can get, even the free ones now, are just out of this world. Like the strings have gotten so much better.
Spitfire audio.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then what's the other one? The Native Instruments. I mean, that's just my go-to for so much. Because like it shocks me just how much good stuff you can get without spending a cent.
It's crazy.
It really is crazy. And drums as well. I just started getting into MIDI. And actually, my next record that's coming out is a lot of it is MIDI, and then I'm having a couple of musicians come in to add some actual real stuff. And it's interesting because it's a departure for me, because I'm sort of doing the opposite thing from you, in the sense that my last EP, it was all just me. Whereas before I'd done collaborations and I'd had various people in, and now I've sort of it's like, okay, it was time to go back. But I think I'm going to sort of flip back and forth with different, like the last one was much more sort of electronic, and I experimented a lot. And because I didn't have any, because I'm not really a musician, I just sort of fake it.
I think you're more of a musician than you think you are.
Well, yeah, but the thing is, I'm not really a soloist. Like, I don't really play an instrument, right? so I have to find other means of getting to the same ends.
Okay.
And the last record, I sort of pushed it in that direction much more than I did earlier, when I could rely on a really good guitarist to come up with a good, good hook, and it helped the whole thing, right? And
Nice.
this new record, I'm playing around, and actually, the guitarist, Bob Prince, is he sent me some files of a song he wrote, and we're actually writing something together. So that was fun, because
Nice.
all the other tracks he's helping me with, I'm basically, I give him a finished track, and then he'll figure out something to play along to it, and then I'll mix it. So, but I always find it interesting to continually do different stuff.
Yeah, you got to mix it up.
Yeah, it sort of keeps you going more. I really feel, although I'm not that sad, but I feel sad for someone who has one great hit and just constantly has to be playing it 20, 30 years later.
Yeah.
Although I'm not that sorry.
Yeah, yeah.
Bought them houses, and it's been a career, and let's face it, it's like going in front of thousands of screaming people isn't all that much of a...
I've thought about this, and I think we'd all be lucky to be one-hit wonders.
I'm hoping for it.
Because in reality, like, they all have, years and years of music that they've made before the one hit, and years of music they probably make afterwards. And it's, to have that kind of like name recognition, visibility is kind of, I wouldn't say it's everyone's dream to be a one-hit wonder, but I think it's not actually a bad fate for, making music and wanting it to be heard. Like, I think.
Yeah. No, listen, I think being a one-hit wonder is better than being a no-hit nobody. If you're going to put it that way. And being a two-hit wonder would be even better,
Definitely. Oh, definitely. Yeah. Yeah.
But so let's talk collaborations then.
Okay.
Who did you and I'm sure you're going to say 2 or 3 people, so because I'm not going to put you on a spot or anything like that, but who did you enjoy collaborating with, and what do you think they brought in terms of some of your songs?
Yeah. So I've been working on a split EP with John Mihy and Chris James Willows.
Yeah.
And so that's been incredible, working with them on it. It's basically done. I think we're just waiting for Chris's computer to survive all the mixing that he wants to do. Chris is such an amazing producer. He just has some crazy chops in Logic, in getting things to sound great. So we each contributed 2 songs to it.
Okay.
And like, I sang on one of Chris's songs, Chris had me sing on one of his songs, and we all kind of banded together to get John's songs to where they needed to be, and we're like.
And did you convince him to do some of the singing?
John?
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
He's got a good voice. He just doesn't. It's so funny.
I love his voice. I love
me too.
Yeah. He'll always be like, "Yo, just delete my tracks." Yeah, that's my John voice in my head. But
yeah, no, but it's perfect. But it's so funny. I've known a number of musicians that are the same way, because I mean, it's been my bread and butter. I was a singer for many years, right? And and thank God, that I got in the bands, because no one else wanted to sing. Or were mostly too nervous, and it's obvious. I mean, you do both. Playing and singing at the same time is also an art. Although I've heard from some people that a lot of the time it's sort of a back and forth, and then there's parts you remember, and that are you're doing both at the same time.
Yeah, I like playing and singing at the same time. I feel like it helps me access the emotions of the moment by playing the music and also adding my voice as an instrument, or playing the guitar, and going from words to harmonica. Like I really enjoy that. There's on one of my tracks, actually, the first time, like when I released the demo, it's like I had to actually no, it's actually a track that's on Spotify, my song Outpost. Like there's like this harmonica solo at the end that goes on for like a minute, and that's all like guitar and harmonica at the same time, right? Like I couldn't emotionally get the same performance by playing the instruments separately and multi-tracking it, so I just had to do it all together at the same time.
No, it's cool, and it's nice. It's nice when you let go sometimes too, you know.
Oh
And
yeah,
and the solo or the part that could be shorter or whatever, you sort of push it that extra little bit,
yeah,
you know. Because I also find, especially with my singing, I love getting really emotional.
nice.
Well, but I find it sort of suits my style too. And oftentimes I don't know about how your process works, but oftentimes I'm I've got a couple of sort of ideas in terms of lyrics, and it's really, I let the music sort of take me, and sometimes it's just divine inspiration, you know,
Mm.
ends up coming out. And you're not going to get it when you're overthinking things.
I could definitely see that. Yeah. I mean, the other part of it is that I hated my voice for the longest time. Like most of my life, I hated my voice. And kind of as I started playing a lot of music and like really getting into going to open mics, I I made the switch in my head to decide that I liked it.
Now, was that before or after you'd attracted the first groupie?
No groupies yet, actually.
Oh damn! Oh damn!
Not holding my breath. Yeah.
Yeah, well, listen, I think in my whole career I've had one,
Mm.
and she became, well, now my ex-wife. You know, hit
Yeah.
it out of the ballpark with the first one, as it were.
Nice.
But anyway, so what what were your musical influences? Who would you say influenced you the most?
Ooh. Music has always been like a huge part of my life. So depending on what phase of life it was, it was definitely many different artists. Like I would go through these kind of sequential episodes of just like focusing on one artist. Like probably the first one was Billy Joel. Like I plumbed the whole Billy Joel catalog and like listened to every album and had it on tape and wore the tapes out. And
Hmm.
like right now, I'd say biggest influence, and has been probably for the last 15 years, is Bright Eyes and Conor Oberst. So and kind of all sorts of artists that have entered in their sphere of music, and collaborated with them and such.
Yeah, and what why do you think that is?
Um, I think I really loved how emotional the music was, how kind of raw the themes in their music is, and it definitely hit me at several vulnerable times in my life where like I think it just like resonated, that oh my gosh, this is exactly how I feel.
Hmm.
Because he talks about a lot of tragic stuff in his music, and so yeah, it's all like it got me through grad school, and getting through grad school is like really hard.
Hmm. Yeah, no, it's great when you can find music like that, or I find music as well that has a certain mood or emotions attached to it. I mean, I know for the longest time, I haven't played it for years, but I really should find it again or look for it online. But I remember so Leonard Cohen's greatest hits.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That record, it's just I got such strong associations to it and sort of rainy days.
Oh
It's
yeah.
like the perfect rainy day music, when you want to be melancholy and there's just so many good songs that
Oh yeah.
and it's just wonderful when you can find things like that.
Yeah, music definitely becomes kind of like for me, like landmarks in my mind of certain times in life, where
Yeah.
you hear something that's like a time machine. It takes you back to certain phases, whatever.
Yeah, well, I think in a lot of ways it's probably similar to smell in the sense that it really affects your memory on a sort of precognitive level,
Yeah,
and that's why you remember so strongly. You remember the first time you heard a song,
oh,
and what you were feeling at that exact moment, right?
oh yeah,
And where you were and all that kind of thing. And it's sort of too bad that I find that with streaming and the way music's going generally, there's just a lot less opportunities and less focus on it than there was.
less opportunities. Like in what way would?
Well, just in the sense that it's like one of my earliest moments where where I thought sort of rock music is cool was when I was like a little kid and there was someone driving by it was early 70s, I guess, in a muscle car blaring BTO Taking Care of Business, I think it was.
Hmm.
And I just like thought that is cool. and and then you heard it on radio. I guess what I mean is that there was just much more because there was less entertainment. There was much more sort of a collective zeitgeist around music.
Hmm.
Like if there was a big hit, everyone would know about it. Whereas now things are just so fractured around, and there's so many subgenres, and and sub, and I think you might have a little less problem with it, but I know with me, it's like a big difficulty of saying, well, exactly what style of music do I play?
Hmm.
Because I keep trying to say, well, this is what it is, and then people look at me blankly.
Hmm.
And I mean, luckily, my stuff, a lot of it sounds very 80s, so at least I can sort of, latch on to some of that.
Right, right.
But you know what I mean. While a lot of your stuff is much more acoustic, uh,
Yeah.
more folky, I would say, but not really. I mean, how would you
I
classify yourself?
I actually have trouble classifying as well.
Yeah.
'Cause it's indie. And I think part of the problem is if you come see me live, you're going to hear kind of indie folk music,
Yeah.
and if you look me up on Spotify, you're going to hear rock and roll, and
Yeah.
um,
Well, I mean, some of your rock stuff is very, very good.
oh,
Uh,
thank you.
yeah, no, I really I thought it's like, that's something that you should do more of.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Um, and
it's.
and how did that come about?
I just started recording. Like you might be talking or thinking about like Look Both Ways.
In particular, yeah.
I I mean, it started as a folk song, and I perform it as a folk song when I'm playing live. But when I started recording it, I was like, oh, what would it sound like if I did it on, like with distorted guitars, and like what would it sound like if I added drums? And it was kind of the first time that I tried, really going in that direction. Um, it's funny. One of my best friends heard it and was like, "Oh, this sounds like '90s grunge." Like it's such a cool folk song. We shouldn't do this to that song. It's like, yeah, I can't please everybody.
Yeah, and it's like there's nothing wrong with '90s grunge.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But I guess but I think that's, to be quite honest, that's a long-standing issue with sort of folk music, isn't it? It's still not liking that it was electrified, you know?
That's true. That's true. I'm not very kind of, canonical in the folk world, I would say. Like
Yeah.
that.
No, but I just meant more your friend's reaction to you doing something more rocked up, let's say.
Yeah, yeah. That's
It's just
true.
and what's your opinion of Mr. Dylan?
Oh, I love Bob Dylan.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I had the Bob Dylan's greatest hits. My dad used to play it in the car all the time on long road trips, and so once the CDs came out, I had the CD, and I loved it. I don't listen to any of his stuff that happened in this millennium, but I really appreciate all of the early Dylan stuff.
Yeah, I think to a certain degree, he probably just ran out of steam.
Yeah,
'Cause he had a period where he was just so prolific
yeah,
and was writing and recording so much, and also writing for so many other people. And that at that level of output, that, well, it's really remarkable. But since, what I mean, sort of since then, or since his heyday, it's really been very spotty.
yeah. I remember a lot of people talking about Modern Times back in the 2000s, being like best album of the year, and I listened to it and I was like, I don't know. It's
Yeah.
not Blowing in the Wind. It's not Maggie's Farm. It's not Subterranean Homesick Blues. Yeah.
Yeah, I felt the same way about a lot of later David Bowie.
Oh
I
yeah,
just
I went through
I
it.
just couldn't get excited about it the way. But I think that, to a certain degree, that level of stars also gets trapped in sort of fan expectations.
Oh yeah,
And it's very difficult, even if you are extremely creative, not to end up, you know, sort of becoming, a Madonna where you're chasing after all the latest producers type thing. And from record to record, you're sounding, you know what I mean? It's Madonna's voice over whatever was successful last year.
yeah.
Thing.
I went through a huge Bowie phase, and I really I I love the albums I love from Bowie, but there's definitely like in the 80s and 90s, and
Yeah.
but Dark Star, his final album, everything I've heard off that was just amazing. So
Dark Star was quite good. Myself, I'm most astonished from the sort of 70s stuff.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
that period.
Hunky Dory. Mm.
Well, listen, the fact that I don't know if you know the story, but he recorded Honky Dory and didn't like it,
Mm.
right? So he immediately went back into the studio and they did Ziggy Stardust.
Oh wow,
And both of those records were released the same year.
oh, it's crazy.
Yeah. And in his spare time, and I think it was exactly that same period, he wrote All the Young Dudes for Mott the Hoople, because Mott the Hoople was about to break up. Well, I think the record company was going to boot them,
Mm.
and it was sort of their last chance, right? And he was a big Mott. He was a really big Ian Hunter fan. And was like, I think he'd grown up because they were like this London. They were the big band in London, right? With all the
Yeah,
kids at that period. So he wrote All the Young Dudes, produced the album that it was on, that became their big sort of hit, right? That put them over the top. And if I'm not mistaken, that same year or the next year, he also did the same thing for Lou Reed with Transformer.
oh wow.
So, and I'm not sure where Iggy Pop's came in, but it was just like, because they were all, like heroes of his, right? and he was in a position, and I think also just the way that main man production worked, that his producer at the time was pushing him, well, producer, the manager was pushing him to do more production work.
I loved The Man Who Sold the World as an album.
That is one of my favorites, and
Oh my gosh, yes.
yeah.
All the Madmen. I don't know too many people that really like that song.
I thought that whole record, it's just like one of these really interesting records that it should have. Well, you have to say that one failed. Honky Dory wasn't doing anything, and then it was almost his last chance, right? With Ziggy Stardust, and that one finally went off, and that's a great record too.
Oh, I love Ziggy Stardust.
And the Aladdin Sane after that, and then probably another one that I find is really underrated that I thought was a great
Low.
record. Well, Low, but you're forgetting a couple, but I was going to say Diamond Dogs.
Okay.
Like and one of his least known great songs is like Candidate.
I don't know this song.
Well, it's the first side between Diamond Dogs and Rebel Rebel. There's a free song. You should look it up, and it's absolutely.
I'm going to listen to this.
Listen to that. There's like a 3-song, and it's Candidate, and I can't think of the other one, but it's like it's all of them are together, and the whole thing lasts about 10 minutes.
Oh wow!
And it's really very ambitious for pop music.
Okay.
And and it's typical Bowie.
It's like Abbey Road side B, good continuity between.
Well, for me anyway, but I've got strange tastes like that. It's like I love Lou Reed's Berlin. I thought that was a great record too.
I didn't hear that.
I'm very much in the minority on that one as well. Well, that one he was in. I think it was after he'd had the success with Bowie with Transformer. He did a record and he was in Berlin. Lots of sort of heroin. And it's an interesting record because it's like he does, I think, a Kurt Weill cover, and it's got a real feel to it.
A Kurt Weill cover?
Yeah, on it, like the sort of 20s cabaret.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure of the cut, but also just the whole musical style of it. It's an interesting record. If you like Lou Reed, it's like that was him going sort of off reserve a little bit.
I think,
but in a really good way, and showed just how good a songwriter he was. But he was like what was it, a Brill building guy before he had any success too. He was just one of those in the industry types.
Yeah, I listened to his album New York a lot when I was like a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed it. I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah, no, it's.
I didn't plumb his catalog like I did with some other artists, though.
Yeah,
Pink Floyd, definitely big Pink Floyd. Definitely went through a heavy King Crimson phase.
Very good. What was your favorite Crimson?
I think I have to say In the Court of the Crimson King because that's what everyone should say, probably. But if I was going to say what is your second favorite King Crimson album, I would say In the Wake of Poseidon. I really enjoyed that one.
Okay. Well, that's an interesting choice.
Yeah. No, nobody likes that album, but I like it.
Well, hey, everyone's got to, you know what I mean? Everyone's got to have their album that they get that no one else gets.
That's right.
Well, but which is totally valid. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. I mean, music is that way, right? Like people like what they like and know what they don't like, and so lucky for us, everyone likes something slightly different.
Well, no, exactly, because otherwise you can only it's very very easy to imagine it because what's popular. A lot of what's popular at the moment shows you what it would be like, right?
Yeah.
So how are things looking in Pittsburgh in terms of performance spaces? Are places opening up? what, did everything survive the last 2 years, or?
Oh, so yeah, a lot of venues have shut down.
Yeah.
Some are opening back up. Bars are open. Several of the open mics that around town are going. One of the open mics I go to is a virtual open mic that is based upon an in-person open mic that for which the building and the venue shut down. So it was basically they shut down when everybody shut down, and they didn't open back up afterwards. The owner tragically passed away, but Kyla, who's doing one of these interviews, Kyla Tilley comes to that open mic frequently.
Oh, that the virtual one. Yeah, I think she mentioned it. Yeah, she's going to be. It's airing this coming Saturday.
Nice. Her mom comes into the YouTube and comments on everyone. It's really great.
No, it's interesting. Well, one of the things she said that got me quite intrigued is the fact that she's on Twitch as well.
Yeah, that's really cool what she does.
Yeah,
she writes songs in front of people on Twitch, which is to me just mind blowing how vulnerable that would have to be to open your mind to the public for your songwriting.
I guess it matters on what your process is like.
Yeah.
Because I was quite interested in it, because I thought as well, it's like, oh, that's it's something I could consider doing, because I've already thought about showing my process, or at least one of them. But I hadn't quite figured out how you do it.
Yeah.
But that might be the way, is sort of on Twitch, because there's certain things that I do that are very, sort of a quick way of working.
Yeah.
And what's nice as well is I think she's able to monetize it.
Yeah,
that's great.
That's really cool too. One thing I haven't really tapped into are these spaces. I'm a little scared sometimes to click on them. They're at the top of my Twitter feed. But that could be a way to also do something like that interactively.
Well, yeah, it'd be interesting. I wonder. Well, I guess there wouldn't be that much lag. That's quite true. You could do something.
I think it's an underutilized facet of our community.
Well, and especially seeing that there's so many people on Twitter.
Yeah.
Twitter playing such a big sort of role in terms of music, right? Where there's very little on YouTube, unfortunately, mostly because of getting copyright issues.
Yeah,
any music you put on, right?
Exposure is really hard on YouTube, I think.
You
pay for ads, which I've heard is pretty effective. But
you
can actually use this platform that we're using, StreamYard, to live stream to Twitter, though. I've done that a few times.
Yeah, and what's the reaction been like?
It's pretty good. It depends. I usually do it kind of late at night, so I don't get a ton of people, but I get some engagement from that. That's pretty good. I usually go live on Instagram, to be honest, because you don't get a notification when somebody goes live on Twitter unless you ask for it. You have to directly sign up for it. But if you follow somebody on Instagram and they go live, you do get a notification that they're going live. So it's pretty nice, and it's a great way to interact with people, and also if I have a show coming up and I just want to get my chops in order to play, it's a great way to just get some practice in and also engage a little.
Yeah, and with all of what's gone on in the last few years, it's been a lifesaver for a lot of people, I think, too.
Oh, yeah.
Because you've actually been able to play. I can only imagine what it would have been like if this had happened 15, 20 years ago.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah.
It's like, calling up random friends and having them listen to things over the telephone.
Oh, yeah. No, it would have been horrible. Over a 96 baud modem or whatever,
Yeah, well, I'm even thinking before then, maybe it's like party lines.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh. Yeah. Those used to exist, didn't they?
Oh yeah, I knew we never had one, but I knew people that did. And the craziest thing, you'd have people listening in, right?
Yeah.
And all that, if you can only imagine.
It's,
All the things that are long gone.
yeah.
Dial telephones,
Oh yeah.
going out somewhere and not, and just sort of agreeing on a time, and if someone didn't show up, you didn't find out what happened until you saw them the next time.
That's true.
But different world.
Definitely.
Different world. So, what was your first musical memory? What was the first thing that you would say, sort of turned your ear?
Oh my gosh. When I was in fourth grade, my dad was like, "I think you should learn how to play guitar," because they had a party and somebody brought a guitar, and I was fascinated with it. I don't actually remember being fascinated with it.
Mm-hmm.
It may have been like when I was like, because this was when I was 10 that he got me the guitar. This may have been something that he noticed when I was like 2.
Yeah.
I don't actually know when it happened, but I remember I remember he thought it was important for me to learn how to play. And so it's not an actual memory I have, but it's a memory that has been related to me.
Interesting. And what was the first music you bought yourself?
The first music I bought was when we got a CD player. I bought Dark Side of the Moon.
So you fall on the dark side of the moon side of the debate.
Oh, about what the best Pink Floyd is?
Yeah.
I mean, I love Sid Barrett, so
Okay.
I loved Piper at the Gates of Dawn, but
Mhm.
I think you know, from where I sit, I definitely think Dark Side of the Moon is better. The Wall. My brother got me a tape of The Wall when I was 14,
Mhm.
and I listened to that tape like over and over and over. Some like I wore that tape out. um,
Yeah. That
yeah.
that was one I never, I guess I'd already gotten out of sort of prog, 70s music at that time.
Mm,
When it came for me, the big one, I mean, I always liked Dark Side of the Moon. Of course, you couldn't get away from it during a
yeah.
certain time period when it came out. But for me, it was really Wish You Were Here.
Oh, so good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although they're both good. They're just different. And if anything, Wish You Were Here, it's what I liked about it is, in a sense, there was a lot more tension in the record because of the way it was made and the way the band was and what was going on with the band, and also just the whole sense of loss, because it was really a record about Sid Barrett, right? Much more than Dark Side of the Moon, which was, a collection of great songs in a sense, and them sort of just. I mean, they had a weird deal with Capitol Records, huh?
Oh, did they?
Yeah, yeah. Well, what they had with Capitol Records is when they signed to them, I think they signed for a lower royalty rate, but they had unfettered access to the studio.
Oh,
And of course, EMI, they had those big studios, right, where all the Beatles records were done and whatever. So they literally became the studio band, right? And how it happened is that they weren't on a clock. They could go in and use studio time anytime they wanted,
well,
which sort of makes a lot of sense in explaining their music, right?
definitely.
You know?
Um, I guess we're experiencing that to some smaller degree now that we all have little home studios and can spend as much time as we want on making the music that we want.
Yeah. Well, in a sense, they were very much like the forerunner of all that,
Yeah.
and much more of a studio. I mean, they had the luxury of it, whereas other bands who did it, I mean, it almost destroyed their careers, right? It's like Queen. If A Night at the Opera hadn't been a hit, they probably never would have made another album.
I could see that.
Because I think it took them almost 2 years and it cost a fortune, right? Because they weren't signed to a label that owned a studio, like owned like a top level studio with all the infrastructure around it. But yeah, no, you're right about that in the sense that the sort of revolution, the digital revolutions, allowed everyone to basically have the same power of sort of studio technology that bands, like the biggest bands, had 20, 30 years ago.
Absolutely, it's kind of inspiring.
Yeah, but I think it's also led to less focus because there's so much that's come out, and it's so hard to sort of get anything out there these days because there's just such a flood, and you're like one grain of sand in a beach of millions, right?
True.
Which wasn't, I don't think it wasn't the same way because there was a lot more filtering back in the day, right? Whether it was better or worse, you look at a lot of the bands sort of pre Led Zeppelin, and very few of them actually saw much of the money, unless they, like the Beatles, had sort of publishing deals, right? That was
Yeah.
that was a big thing, and they wrote songs for other artists, and and stuff like that. But there's so many like of the 60s bands that were basically treated as badly or probably worse than than us with the streaming.
Yeah.
Like I can't remember who it was. It was what band was it that they literally, the band was selling millions. It might have been the Who. The band was selling millions of records, and they were getting like 25 pounds a week.
It's crazy.
Yeah,
it's criminal how they were treated. Yeah.
Well, it's because like I think that like those management contracts that have come back into favor again, they aren't a new invention, right? That's what most of the 60s bands signed unknowingly as 17-year-olds, right? Just happy to get out of whatever little town they were and not have to work in a factory. And
Yeah.
I think Black Sabbath was the same way, and then it was really the manager, the guy who ended up managing Led Zeppelin, that changed it all.
Oh, did he?
Oh yeah. He was, I can't remember what his name is, this big guy. And he just defended his artists and literally was like a real imposing figure, and he'd stand up to the crooks running venues and whatever and say, we get this much, and we would go crazy. And if they had allowed someone in to sell what he thought were illegal merchandise, he'd go and clear it out and say, like, he was a real beast.
Okay. Interesting.
But it's what they needed, and and they basically they renegotiated, they started their own record company, and they made a fortune. But I think they were like one of the first ones outside of, let's say, the Beatles. But the Beatles had done it differently, right? And the Beatles were in their own universe in a sense. I mean, they were more of a cultural phenomena than anything. Much more so than any of the bands that were around.
It's funny how visibility is. It's something I think all the indies care about and worry about. It's like, how do you get in front of more people with your music?
Yeah.
There's lots of different ways to do it. There's lots of strategies.
I just think that we're now living in very much the attention economy, and there's just so many other things that are demanding attention where it wasn't that way earlier. you know, in the sense that the whole idea like of a even, you know, even up to the era of MTV, uh, that, you know, could break a band that then became Nirvana. I mean, they became what they became because MTV was in existence. You know, if MTV hadn't been there and the previous, you know, sort of charts with the record, with the radio play and all that hadn't been there, they never would have gotten that big. I
You
don't think.
think?
I don't think because
Oh,
in this world, well, look, there's been as groundbreaking bands since,
mm.
right? None of them have ever come close.
I think there's a lot of luck involved
Oh, definitely.
in stardom, and that luck will take any avenue that's available. And so
Yeah.
if MTV doesn't exist, there are going to be other platforms in which the lucky ones prosper. You know, I think, I don't
Oh,
know.
no, definitely. My point is more that there's no longer that laser concentration
Mm,
of one spotlight,
mm.
that if you become the big thing there, it's going to spill out into all kinds of other stuff.
Right,
Now
right.
you've got so many different venues and there's so many different things going on that there just
Yeah,
isn't that, you know, that focus.
yeah, I
I
think.
mean, the same thing. I'd say the same thing with the Beatles or any, you know, because you just don't. We're sort of going into a post superstar era in a weird sort of way, right?
I can see it. Yeah, I think for exposure, there's like you can get signed, right? Like you
Yeah,
can pursue record companies and try and get signed. You can do the DIY, social media thing and try and reach as many people as you can that way who are, findable and amenable to, you know, interacting with musicians that are boots on the ground. You can play the local game, like you can try and like build up a local presence and local fandom and play out in your region or area. Try and get on tour, or you can go like like product placements. Like getting your music into TV shows and sync all that kind of stuff. I think there's I don't know. I think there are a lot of ways that you can try and reach out beyond the small patch of influence that anybody can get. But you have to decide what you want to do to get there. And what best suits all the constraints you have in your life to do it.
yeah, and also the type of music, your, you know, the age, the type of people you might interest or attract.
Right. Target
Uh,
audience.
yeah. Well,
Yeah,
I mean, the other thing is, you know, music has always been a young person's game
that's true.
in a
Yeah,
sense. Popular music, I mean.
definitely.
You know, less so the more niche the music became or is. Because I'm sure that, you know, if you're a talented country musician, you're still going to have the chance to have your big hit in your 50s because the audience doesn't really care, right?
Yeah,
Whereas, you know, if you're going to try to do it in rap or in the pop music, well, you know, I think you're 23 and you're over the hill. You're too old.
that's true. That's true. Yeah, I got to work my country angle, I guess.
Well, you got the banjo and
That's
and the laptop steel, so you
that's
know.
right.
I mean, you just got to figure out a twang, or maybe move to Nashville or something,
That's right.
and
And that is
maybe
something
that's what
that
you can sing.
comes up. You see people, say, "Oh, you got to move to Los Angeles or New York or Nashville." At some level, you can have a pretty big influence without having to do that these days, I think.
Well, I think it really depends on what your goals are
Yeah, yeah.
and where you are, because the one thing that I would say that, you know, would make sense in terms of moving to a place like Nashville or Memphis is just the availability of all these venues.
Mm.
And then the fact that the people that are going to the venues are, you know, are all of people who work at the record companies and work in the industry, which was the same way with Los Angeles, right? In the day when Los Angeles was the big place, or
Right.
or London, you know,
Mm-hmm.
in the 60s when London was the big place, or New York when New York was really happening, right?
Right.
And until the sort of genre had been had been solidified, they weren't going out to sign bands in other cities. Well, even look at what happened with Seattle and grunge, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, half those bands wouldn't have got signed, except that Seattle became the place. The venues started opening. The executives and everyone started going there. Musicians all started moving there, and it became the scene, and all these bands get signed.
Yeah. There are little indie labels in every major city
Mm-hmm.
now, you know.
Yeah. Well,
And
because it's become easier and easier to do, right?
yeah, yeah.
You know, but that still doesn't mean you're going to sell much, and you're still you're still trying to get a some sort of local support and a fan base.
Oh yeah. I mean,
And one of the sort of things that I've heard that's happening now, while John Mickey goes on about it a lot, is that oftentimes the record company will sign you not for anything to do with your music, but they're basically signing up your fan base.
mm,
You know,
yeah, it's interesting.
but I also think that that's been going on for the longest time too, right?
Oh yeah.
Because there's so many stories of bands where they wanted to sign one member, and then they'll basically they tried to break up the band to do it, right?
Yeah. I think people often think that getting signed is like a magic bullet to success and fandom and you know stardom, but I think the grind kind of never ends. That you have to love the grind.
If anything, I went to university with someone who was in a band that got signed to a major label, did 2 records. Neither of them did particularly well. And if anything, it's almost worse than not getting signed,
Mm,
because the problem is that you get the advances, but the advances are loans,
mm,
basically. And if for whatever reason the record, or whatever you want to call it these days, doesn't sell, then you're on the line for all of the overpriced studio time. At least, if they're bringing you into a big studio, you're the one who's paying for all the parties that the executives go to.
mm.
You're paying their salaries. And with him, I mean, he left in debt.
Wow,
you
that's
know and
sad.
I don't think that that's an uncommon story, right? And now it's even worse. I think a lot of, like, the younger sort of teenage stars, the ones that are much more packaged, they're basically back to the way it was in the 60s, making $500 a week.
Mm,
you know the house, the cool apartment they're in is leased, it's not theirs. That Lamborghini they're driving around is leased, it's not theirs.
mm.
You know what I mean? Nothing
That's
is
pretty
there.
crazy.
And if you sell that first hit, you live high on the hog, the second hit doesn't come.
Mm,
you know but that's been going on for years too, right? It's like Sly Stone. If you can, how many hits did that guy have, right, in the
yeah.
60s, right? And by the early 70s, he was living out of a van. He was
Didn't,
homeless.
didn't see the profits, huh?
No, but no one did, right? I don't think anyone, it's like the Beatles. Most of the profits, I think, were mostly from publishing, and they had one of the better deals, right? But if they didn't own all the publishing rights, and have really good management, they would have been like all the others. The Who, I don't think they made any money until, late in their career, right? You know, because it was just, they went in not knowing. They signed these deals, right? because, well, yeah, it's like you're on a record label. If you can only imagine, right? They're kids, and they sold away their soul. I mean, I think at this point, I heard as well that a lot of these deals, they're even taking all the concessions, so the T-shirts, all of this stuff. So really, and then you have no idea because you're the artist. You're concentrating on that. You're traveling around. You're constantly in this grind. You don't have time to go and forensically check the books.
Right.
And let's face it, this is not one of the more honest industries out there. There's a lot of slimy people.
Yeah, it's not, is it?
There's a lot of slime, right? So, it's in some ways it's almost, I don't know. For me, it's more of I consider it more of a hobby than anything else. I mean, of course, I'd love to do more.
Oh yeah, I would too.
But it's not, I've hit the age where it's not the thing that I define my life around. This is a nice outlet for creativity, and if anyone likes it, great. It's also great to do all the collaboration. I find that a lot of fun. I'd love to, I think after this album comes out, I'd love to find a band and I'd like to actually play it live, because I think what I'm doing now is much more suitable for it. Let's say, that you could play it live, and I haven't been in a band for years, and I'd like that because I really enjoy I always like the rehearsing.
Oh, okay.
And there's nothing that beats playing live.
There is nothing that beats
There's
playing.
nothing that comes even close. You can't explain it to someone who hasn't done it.
I hadn't really done it before the pandemic. I'd gone to a handful of open mics, but I really, with going to virtual open mic at the beginning of the pandemic and kind of developing a kind of a flair for performing during that, I was pleasantly surprised how much I love playing in front of people in person. In a crowded room, nothing beats having the attention of a room on you as you're opening a window into your soul.
Yeah, no, true. And I think music is one of the few vocations, or at least, as it's practiced now, where you really have the opportunity of these three very different but very great and interesting things, or four actually. It's like composing music is its own thing.
Oh yeah.
Practicing, if you're in a band and you're doing rehearsals, that's its own thing. It's like when a song finally comes together and the band nails it for the first time in the studio, and that it's that you've got something there. I mean, that's a great moment. Playing live is, again, it's indescribable the high you are. You see why so many of them are become drug addicts. It's to get down from this high from playing live, right? Especially, I can only imagine what it's like around in front of 100,000 people.
Did you find it addictive to get likes on your tweets? Or
of course, who doesn't?
Oh, right? It's addictive.
Listen, on my I've got two YouTube channels. I just launched this one recently.
Yeah,
very small.
I subscribed and liked it.
No, thank you very much. Pass the word around. I mean, it's in everyone's interest, because the more people that are subscribed, the more people that'll watch. And and I think with this kind of content, if they're interested in it, they're going to want to watch all of it, right? It won't just be one musician. They'll want to, they'll like the format, and they'll want to watch these kind of talks, because I haven't really seen anything like it,
Yeah, it's really
so I but in my other channel, I ended up I'm doing a similar format and doing interviews, and one of them just exploded and went crazy. And like went. I've been spending the last week or so trying to figure out, well, what was it? What was it that caused that many people to actually click it and watch it? Much more like a magnitude more.
Oh wow!
Than anything else I'd done.
That's
and it's interesting, right? And of course you want to be, it comes down, you want to be liked, right?
Oh yeah.
Who doesn't want to be liked, right?
Absolutely.
And that's why social media is so addictive.
Well, I've been playing guitar ever since I was in fourth grade.
Hmm.
And I just, it took up a global pandemic for me to realize how much I needed to share my music with other people in my life.
Yeah.
It's like, to play a song and have it be heard and appreciated.
Yeah.
It's like meant the world to me. Because
You're not the only one. I mean, I as well. The first thing that I released was during the pandemic.
yeah,
Was in 2020. You know.
it's amazing that it's an amazing byproduct of a horrific, worldwide event. That
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think I think, and I'm not trying to be sort of hyperbolic or anything, but I really think that it's one of the things that kept me going. It
yeah,
really saved me. You know what I
oh
mean?
yeah,
And I've heard so many other musicians say the same thing.
me too,
It
man.
it would be interesting to see if anyone's done a study, you know, on
I'm
how.
sure.
Yeah, well,
I'm
usually
sure, like post hoc, it'll be done.
Oh yeah, well, always, but that's what I'm saying. It usually takes 3-4 years, 5 years, for
Oh yeah.
someone to sort of. But it would be perfect because I think that there's definitely it was a big bump in terms of especially indie stuff.
Oh yeah. No, I feel fraternity with all the people that um that joined social media during the pandemic. Like
Mhm.
Godzilla, one of my good Twitter friends who I collaborated with. He I think we started around the same time, and just like, I don't know, just like really hit it off. And John Mitchie is another person. Like I think we were, like, I remember kind of running into him randomly, and then I tagged him on some big poll that I had made, and
Yeah.
the next thing you know, like, we're like, we DM every day now. And so,
Yeah, well, he was definitely he's definitely the sort of central figure
yeah,
of
he's
our whole
mastermind.
community.
He's
You
the
know,
mastermind.
yeah, the Robin Hood of Twitter.
Maybe, yeah.
No, but it's quite funny because he also he was the one that got me into a lot of things, introduced me to a lot of people. Any growth that I saw in terms of Twitter followers, and that a lot had to do with him. And
Yeah,
it's nice to see that it's he got his check mark,
yeah.
and sort of has grown in influence because it couldn't happen to a nicer guy.
Oh yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah.
I don't think I'll ever get my check mark because I release music under a moniker.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I did, like, when I started, I did it under various ones, and it was funny when I decided to actually go the proper route, and sort of get your publishing and get your all of these things.
Mm,
That is a whole other episode. I can't wait to actually talk to find someone who knows and bitch about that, because
mm,
I'm not impressed with a lot of these organizations.
mm.
And the whole process is really broken, quite frankly, on all ends. And what's bad, and it's interesting, maybe as a last little thing as we wrap up. Just the more you dig into it,
Mm,
the grimier it gets.
mm.
Especially with a lot of these smaller streaming services and all that kind of stuff. You
Right,
know. Well, no, but it's almost like it'd almost be worthwhile just like all deciding on one and leaving all the rest of them with your finger. You just give them the finger,
Bandcamp. Just only go through Bandcamp.
or just only go through Bandcamp. But the problem with Bandcamp is then, well, how do you know what I mean?
Oh
You know,
yeah, no,
I mean, Bandcamp has its issues as well.
definitely. I think that with the Epic buying it, there's some hope that maybe they'll update their services and
Yeah.
in a way that in a way that makes the small artist more discoverable. But you know,
that's I think that's the biggest issue,
yeah,
you know,
it's a big
and
deal
the
for
and the
Bandcamp to like to release an album. You got to do albums so that they can maybe editorially, give you, throw you a bone.
yeah. But then it's how many people are actually, these all become chicken and egg situations, I find.
I could see
Uh,
that.
just no, but just in the sense that there's no one there, so you're promoting to very few people, and
Oh yeah,
but I think yeah, I think it's just continue on.
yeah.
What I find, with all of this stuff, it's like, every time you get knocked back, or you get feeling a little bit down about it, you just gotta say it is what it is,
Oh yeah.
and
Every
and get
fan
and
is a godsend.
having
I think you
exactly.
have to. I think you have to take that approach. That even if
Yeah.
you're playing to a room of one person, that person matters. Even if you're in a live stream, there's only one person watching. That person came and clicked and watched. To watch
Yep.
you play, and you have to give it your all, and
Hmm.
show them some. That you value them, and in hopes that you build that momentum that you need to keep on chugging, because it is a marathon, like
No, true.
that's how you win the race, is you keep on running.
True enough. So just as a last thing before I let you go, um, when do you think your album's going to be released? Do you have a date in mind yet?
So I'm working on getting a release show set up locally here in Pittsburgh, and it's going to be in the fall. So I'm looking at like late September, early October at the moment. That'll give me a good chance to have a nice long pre-save campaign and put out a couple of singles. But yeah, it's coming this fall, hell or high water. So
That's good. And are you planning on actually having physical product, or is it going to be an all digital release?
I'm gonna print off at least CDs, maybe tapes, probably not vinyl. I feel like vinyl, although it's really cool and hip and trendy, is just not finite. I feel like I can save vinyl for if and when I ever get big enough that there is a large bolus of people that really want the vinyl, and then it can be a great big thing. So that's my philosophy about
Yeah,
vinyl.
no, the one sort of suggestion I'd make
Hmm.
is, especially if you have such a long sort of pre-sales period,
Hmm.
you might just see if there was enough interest
That's
to
true.
pre-sell, you know,
I did a vinyl.
or maybe do like an Indiegogo or something like that for a vinyl pressing. And if it doesn't happen, people get their money back and they can buy the CD.
That's true. That
Yeah.
might be good. I did a vinyl direct to vinyl session last October. I went to this little studio in Brooklyn that basically, like, it's capped at 25 people have to order it, but they order one of your songs and you record the song in that studio and it gets cut straight to a vinyl record. But
Interesting.
that was that was fun. I was happy that sold out. That I got, you some, and then it was so much fun to see everybody post their, like their pictures. I have a picture of Sophie Dorston holding my record.
Nice.
Yeah,
Anyway, thank you so much for your time.
thank you
And
so much for having me.
oh no, it was a pleasure. And if the opportunity appears around the time that you do the release, we'll try to do something again.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, what we're gonna have to see. I've been a little overwhelmed by the response I've had,
Mm.
and I literally have, like, I think 30 people or so now
Oh,
that sort
nice.
of agreed to it. No, it's crazy. I think if I had better numbers, like more subscribers, I'd probably go to doing twice a week. I could easily go to twice a week or 3 times a week.
You just
It
started the
doesn't.
channel, so it's, you know,
Well, that's
it's
the
own
whole
place.
that's the whole thing. But it's rather a luxury to have a backlog of people. So I basically, up until June at this point, it's booked. So the next person I interview, they won't be coming out until middle of June
Oh wow.
or something like that. So and the other thing is, I'd like to also maybe have some sort of industry types as well, and mix things up a little bit. Not only speak with musicians, but I think everyone would be interested to hear the other side of the story from promoters and
Yeah,
management and record company execs, if I could get them. So that they might even push people back. And then it's also trying to juggle, because I'd like to show things when people have releases, like, with Kyla, it's great, her album's going to be coming out, so it allows her to do a little bit more promo.
I have a cameo on that album.
I know.
Awesome.
Anyway, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And, oh no, it was great. And it's great. It's always great to put like a face to the name, to the Twitter handle and
Absolutely.
stuff like
And
that,
good
right?
luck with your album and all the
Yeah, well,
releases and the show.
I'm going to be releasing, it looks like, around. I was hoping to do it sooner, but it's likely to be summer, early fall too. I've decided I'm gonna make it right.
Good things come to those who wait.
Exactly. I think I want to be more of a perfectionist on this one.
Nice.
Anyway, thank you so much.
Thank you.
You take care.
Yeah, you too.